Hey everybody, it is Kim with easythingstosew.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make these portable car play mats. These can easily be untied and then unrolled for screen-free fun for little ones. And in fact, there's even a car garage here so that they can have the cars right there and then play on the play mat. And as you can see, these are so thin, they can easily be put in a backpack or a purse. Kids love these because it's such imaginative play and they can go for hours putting the cars along the roads. Now adults love these because it's screen-free playtime, not as loud, doesn't need any batteries, not electronics, and it's so easy to make. Now, not only are these great gifts for kids or stocking stuffers, but they're also perfect for shoebox gifts. Things like Operation Christmas Child Shoebox. I made these specifically so that they will fit inside a shoebox. So without further ado, I'll show you how to make these. Then at the end, I'm going to tell you ways that you can save money on the fabric and make it more economical, which is important if you are making a lot of these for shoeboxes. I'll show you how it fits into a shoebox and then give you some variations so that you can modify it to make it your own. Let's get going. I am using perhaps one of the most popular playmat fabrics. You can get this on Amazon. It is also a 61-inch wide fabric. This is what it looks like a little bit more up close. This is a Hot Wheels car, and you can see the scale is pretty good on that, and it is quite colorful. So that's the playmat fabric that I chose. Let me show you what all fabrics that you are going to need. So this is the playmat fabric piece. This is going to be 20 inches by 11.5 inches. You are also going to want a separate fabric for the garage. I chose this one that had some road signs on it. And that is going to be a 9-inch by 11.5 inch piece of fabric you need. For the garage base, I chose a little bit less expensive fabric. I'll talk about that at the end of the video, but this is going to be a 4.5 inch by 11.5 inch piece. And then the base, the back of the entire playmat, this is going to be a 24 inches by 11.5 inches. I suggest you get something a little bit thicker. I chose this kind of like felt by the yard. You could choose a twill, a denim. Again, I'll talk about a little bit more variations at the end. So let's get sewing. You're going to want to take this garage top and fold that in half. And so you're going to want it 10.5 inches long and then about 4.5 inches tall. So you want to put those wrong sides together. You got the right sides facing out, and then be sure to iron that. And you're going to want to have that fold on top pretty crisp. Okay, one of the first things that you want to do is take this garage base and flip it over. So if there is a right and a wrong side, doesn't really matter, but this is the wrong side. And you're going to make some lines. You can do this with a pen. It doesn't have to be something that is erasable. So you're going to make these lines at the 3-inch mark, at the 5 3/4 inch mark, and at the 8.5 inch mark, and that is measuring from the left over to the right. If you're going to be making multiples of these, I just suggest turning a pattern piece over. First of all, I suggest making a pattern piece, and then turning it over and putting those lines on the back, and then just kind of lining that up and making lines. It's just so much easier than having to measure it each time. So with right sides together, you're going to put this garage base fabric right here, line up the raw edges, and then stitch along here 1/4 inch seam allowance. There's no need to backstitch. Once you've got that stitch, go through with a hot iron and press those seams open. Now open up so you have the right sides of the fabric facing up, and now we're going to put the garage top on here. So this is the folded edge that you have ironed to have a crisp fold, and just go ahead and place that over the garage base. Easier to do when you're not doing it one-handed. But match up those unfinished edges there. Now it's okay if this overlaps, that is completely fine, but you do want this folded part to be facing the play mat. Then go ahead and clip all the way around to secure. So after we've got that clipped together, we're gonna flip it over towards the wrong side. Now, gonna come in and sew along each of these 3 lines. You only have to sew along those 3. Just make a straight stitch. There's no need to start back stitching there, but stitch up to the open seam and then just like back stitch and finish off your straight stitch right here. I would sew over that seam up to there, then start back stitching. So now that you've sewn those lines, this is what it's going to look like with the right sides facing up. Now it's time to attach the ribbon. This is going to be the way that you secure the roll-up mat. This is 30 inches of ribbon, and went ahead and folded it in half. Now, keeping the cut ends over here, I'm going to take that fold and put it about halfway down this side of the fabric. That's about 5 3/4 down. It doesn't have to be perfect, but somewhere along there. And then I would just suggest putting a little bit of an overlap there just to make sure that that gets into the seam, and then go ahead and clip that down. Now that it's clipped down, you've got these long edges, open edges inside. Make sure that they're inside and nowhere near the seams, because you don't want to accidentally sew those into the seams. Now it's time to take this base fabric and to put it right side down over the rest of the play mat and line up those edges. Clip all the way around the base and the play mat. So if you're like me and you try really hard to get pattern pieces cut right, and yet there's still somehow they don't line up, what I suggest is just going through and making sure that you trim off any excess, because you are using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So when you're doing things like this, you might end up not getting both pieces of the fabric in that seam. I don't know, y'all, I try. I really do try. Never lines up. I don't know why. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to trim off this little bit, and then I'm going to sew all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am going to leave about a 3 to 4 inch gap right here that is not sewn, so that you can turn it inside out. And at the beginning and end of that gap, be sure to backstitch. So I've got everything stitched with that 1/4 inch seam allowance, left this open. You might have noticed I did switch my threads so that it would match. The black would be on the garage and this green would match the back and the top, which is more of a green. Now I'm going to come through and I clipped the corners. So that is just cutting at a diagonal close to the stitching, but not too close to the stitching. And that's to allow the corners to turn inside out and become straight. Just come in at an angle and snip that off. Now we are going to be turning this inside out through this opening. Once you get this flipped inside out, just be sure to go ahead and pull out these corners. And you can do that by sticking your hand in there, kind of pushing them out with your fingers. Or you can use some sort of turning tool. I have this flamingo turning tool. You could use a pencil or a pen or whatever you have, and just go in and push out those corners to be more straight and square. Now that we've got it turned inside out, one of the last things to do is to just press this flat. You can see how it's kind of bulky. You want to just kind of push out those seams and press those flat. While you're doing that, you do want to take care of this opening and just go in with your fingers and kind of fold it under to where it would match the rest of the seam. Go ahead and press that down with an iron. You're going to be top stitching that in just a moment. And you can see that I have top stitched this close, so it is done. Now, one thing that I forgot about the ribbon is that you might want to tie a knot here at the ends so it doesn't fray. These are Hot Wheels cars that I got, and you can see they easily go in to each of the little compartments. And the compartments are snug enough to where the cars are not going to easily fall out, but they're also not too tight to where there's going to be a problem for little ones in order to get those cars in. Now I'm simply going to just roll this up, and it's super easy to roll up even with the cars in there, and then tie it closed. All right, so some great ways of how to save money. But first of all, let me actually show you how these fit into an Operation Christmas Child shoebox. Easily fits in there. Plenty of room. Oops. Plenty of room to get all kinds of other stuffies and school supplies and everything else in there. Let me show you what it looks like in a Walmart plastic shoebox. You see, it doesn't take up much room at all. Now, this is the fabric that I got on Amazon. This tends to be one of the best playmat designs that people like to use for these. So that is this fabric. Now, I do like this fabric. I do wish it is like more polyester, so it is fraying pretty good on the edges. I would highly suggest using maybe a zigzag stitch on the edging to keep it from fraying while you're working on it or serging it. The other thing is that it kind of like doesn't lay as flat as some of the cotton ones that I have used. I have gotten playmat fabric on spoon flour, and that is the other design that I was showing previously. It is great fabric, and I like how it stays flatter once you sew the playmat together. However, it is going to be a little bit more expensive. I got that while it was on sale, and yet even on sale, it still was a little bit more than Amazon's. Now, this Amazon fabric also comes in quite a wider width than other things that I have seen. It comes in like a 61-inch width. So you are getting more fabric per yard than you would with like a quilter's cotton or something that comes in a smaller width of about 42 or 44 inches. In order to maximize the playmat fabric that you buy, you'll notice that when I talked about, I used this fabric as the garage base. That is the pattern piece that I was referring to. This is actually just twill pants fabric that I cut off of old pants. You can see because of the way this is sewn, you do not see what fabric you use as the garage base. So you can use a really inexpensive fabric. You can reuse something. I wouldn't use a jersey or a knit, but you could use pretty much anything that you have scraps inside. Now on the top, you do want to use something nice as well. This can be a quilter's cotton. Doesn't have to be anything too fancy. And then on the back, I have chosen a lot of different types of fabrics for the back. This one is like a felt that came by the yard. I'm not sure if this would be necessarily my top choice because it is felt and it has, you know, the fibers that tend to get all over the place. I do have some fleece, like a very thin fleece that I have used as well. But what my favorite is like a twill cotton. That way it's slightly canvas-like, but not as thick as canvas. It gives it some sturdiness and some substance, but it's not really expensive. I found all of my twill cotton at thrift stores, and so it made it really, really inexpensive. I could also suggest that you might want to use like a denim. You could even use old denim pants. That would also be a great backing. You do want something that's a little bit heavier than a quilter's cotton. Now, if you want to use a quilter's cotton because you found a great color or print for the back, you can give it a little bit more oomph and a little bit more sturdiness by putting some interfacing on it. So you would just iron some interfacing, like a lightweight interfacing, to that back fabric before you put the playmat together. Now keep in mind, you do still need this to roll together. So you don't want an interfacing that is too strong or too sturdy, because then it's going to have a hard time rolling, and you definitely don't want that. I have also seen that people do like a fusible fleece inside to get a little bit more sturdiness. I don't really think that it's necessary if you use a backing that has a little bit of heft to it. Now, as far as variations, I did use a ribbon because it was just quick and easy. You could use anything that you like. I mean, you could use twine. I have seen quite a lot of people make coordinating ties out of fabric that also matches what they use on the playmat, and you can do that. It's kind of like making bias tape, and then you just sew the seams together. So you need to have a lot of fabric, a large length, or at least put together quite a few different lengths and sew them together in order to do that. I just found that to be a little bit more time intensive than I wanted to spend when I was making batches of these. However, if you're only making one, you might want to have that little custom detail. Now, I did design these so that it was easy to batch them and you could make quite a lot. This is like that cotton twill that I was talking about that I found at a thrift store. This is the spoonflower fabric that I was talking about before. So I did try to maximize the size, and the size specifically is as tall as it'll go while fitting into a shoebox, and then as wide as it can go while maximizing the yardage and getting as many yards as you can. Now, this is a spoonflower fabric. There are a few others that I have that I haven't shown. I'll put those links below, but I love this one because it's a little bit more neutral, and I wanted to make some for girls to have like a car playmat. Found these pink cars, and I think that it looks great. This color combination, I was just really happy with this. Now, as far as the other playmat fabric, this Amazon fabric, I created this pattern so you can get as many as possible out of the yardage and not waste a lot of fabric. So if you are really careful and you cut exactly right, you should be able to get 9 playmats out of 1 yard of fabric, assuming that the dimensions are, it's 36 inches that they gave you as the yard, and it's 61 inches wide still. So I wanted to be sure that you could get as many as you could out of that yardage. Now, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I will have a written instructions with step-by-step photo tutorials. I know everybody learns differently, and you may just want to be able to reference back to these instructions without having to go through the video and listening to it. So I will put a link to that blog post in the description below, as well as all of the materials that I've used. And just let me know, are you excited to make some of these? I'm so thrilled at how easy they are to make, and I'd love to hear if you make them as well. Happy sewing, everybody.